Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney lied during his campaign, and his lie got exposed this past week. And it also appears he is failing at his biggest campaign promise, which was to stand up to President Trump. So politics in the United States this week are no fun at all. So please join us as instead we talk about our friendly neighbors to the north. All right, so let me tell you guys a story. This is a story about a simple man, an honest hockey player, a goaltender, actually, which is objectively the coolest position of any sport, coming from a former soccer goaltender myself. So this goaltender, okay, imagine he spent his youth bravely protecting his team's goal from offensive players roided up on maple syrup out in the Badlands of Canada. And he had a dream. He had a dream that one day his experienced goaltending would be used to protect his entire country. He dreamed one day when he was 60 years old, he'd run for Prime Minister of Canada on a promise to protect Canada from an evil aggressor who's trying to score goals on Canada, this time roided up on Diet Coke instead of maple syrup. And
well done.
I am, of course, talking about Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who is the new Liberal Prime Minister who came into office March of this year. And this isn't an exaggeration. He pretty much entirely ran on standing up against Trump. His slogan was elbows up, like hitting elbows with Trump is literally what his slogan was, and pushing back against the United States. He promised he would bring back free trade between Canada and the United States, meaning he'd stop Trump from slapping tariffs on Canada. And we actually have a whole episode. Troy, if you could pull up the articles for me. We have a whole episode on this. I just wanted to show people just a little throwback here. I can share my screen. So from my humble opinion, say what?
That's a good episode. I like
this. Was a fun episode. This is a whole episode we did on Canada and Canada's last election. If you all want to go back and check on this one, I only bring it up because, in my humble opinion, it looked like the whole standing up to Trump. It helped Carney get into office essentially. So we talked about this before, but essentially it wasn't looking too good for the Liberals. Justin Trudeau had just had to step down, kind of in disgrace. And the conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, he actually looked like he had a pretty decent shot. He's the conservative party leader there in Canada. Looked like he had a decent shot of becoming prime minister. But Mark Carney actually ended up winning. And Mark Carney did not run against Pierre Poilievre. Mark Carney ran against Trump. And it was important to point about that. And so if y'all want to hear our takes on that, I think I was a little bit more in the boat of kind of blaming Trump for that situation. I don't think all of the hosts here fully put the blame on Trump. But my take, of course, was that Trump joking about Canada becoming I say joking, I don't know if he's serious or not, about Canada becoming the 51st state, that really gave a big boost to the Liberals. All right.
So if y'all want to know what I say? I say that there's a little bit of truth in every joke. So whether or not he was joking, I don't think it was 100%. Anyway.
Understandable. So if you want to hear more of our take on that and the past election, go check out that video. You can take down the article, Troy. But getting back onto talking about Carney,
dude, we got a crazy story today. Man,
this is a crazy story.
This story, when I've heard part of it, it's insane. I just could not believe.
So moving back to Carney,
they're going to make a movie about it.
This maybe they'll make a movie about this someday. We have a crazy story about this brave, and that I wasn't making that up. He really was a goaltender. But I don't know. Everybody in Canada plays hockey, so I guess that's probably not too big of a deal. So there's something else though that Carney, a little bit of a stereotype there. There's something else though that Carney promised during as he was coming during his campaign and as he was coming into office that had nothing to do with Trump. So we'll get onto the Trump stuff in a little bit. We'll get on to standing up to Trump and standing up to the tariffs. But first, I'm going to tell you guys a story about something that came out this past week. So during the campaign trail, Carney made some promises about his finances. So just so y'all know, Mark Carney, he was a banker. And before this, he never held public office. He had no public office and now he's the Prime Minister of Canada, right? So he's the former governor of the Bank of Canada and also the Bank of England, which are like the country's central banks, okay? And he was also on the board of several large companies. So that's all fine and good, but people were concerned that when he took office, that he might, as the prime minister, be working essentially for his former employees because he had assets and invested interest in his former employees, okay? However, during his campaign, Carney said that wasn't going to be an issue. He was going to do everything right and ethical. And then he took office in March 14th. And I actually have a video I want to show you guys. If you actually, Troy, if you could pull back up the article.
Yep.
So I'm going to show you guys this video. But this video was taken March 26th, right? So like a little over after he took office. And the reporter is asking him about his finances. And y'all just needed, I would summarize it for you, but it's only a minute long. So I'm just going to show you guys this. Just have to figure out how to share this again. Feel free to make Canada jokes while I'm doing this.
Well, I was going to ask you if a stereotype, I don't know if the definition, if it's still a stereotype, if it's true 100% of the time. Is that still a stereotype, or
I don't know. I don't know if
is?
everybody in Canada plays hockey though. So that's
okay. Well, then I guess never mind. Moot point.
All right. So here is the video. And again, this was taken like about a week after Mark Carney took office.
I own nothing now. I came into public life at a time of crisis. I put my hand up because of the crisis, because of what's represented by that bridge, what's represented by the threats to these good men and women of you.
Real fast, he started out by saying, I own nothing, in case you missed that. I own nothing. I own nothing now. That's what he said. I'll continue.
Unifor and their colleagues across southwestern Ontario and across Canada. I came in. What I've done is put all my affairs in order well in advance. I own nothing but cash and personal real estate. So
he said he put all of his affairs in order.
That's
ahead of time. Ahead of time, he owns nothing but cash.
This is on the campaign trail, or this you said a week after he got elected?
This is a week after he took office. This is a week after he took office.
Okay, got it.
So he's the prime minister right now, but he's only been the prime minister for a week, and he's being asked about his finances. That last part is important. Well ahead of time. I put everything together. So I'll continue.
That's not going to change. In public life, that's not going to change. It's actually quite straightforward.
So then, just to be clear, then going forward, you have no potential equity stake, no potential stock options, or any other potential future payments that you currently anticipate could come from either Strike or Brookfield.
What he just asked is, do you have any stocks?
Oh man, I didn't think about that.
Do you have any stocks or stock options? And he just listed two companies, Stripe and Brookfield, which we'll get into that.
Wow.
So he's asking him straight up. So you're saying you have no ownership of these companies anymore, none whatsoever. So let's see what he says.
So what I have is cash, personal real estate, and their assets all those assets were divested into a blind trust, which is managed by a trustee. And it literally means exactly what it says. I don't know what's in it.
All right. He said he divested all the assets. He says he owns nothing, and he says he has a blind trust, but he doesn't know what's in it, right? So gut reaction from you guys. Do you think that he's telling the truth? Do you think he's being honest here?
Well, he is a politician, so. And I know at this point he hadn't been, but he made himself one.
It's hard to believe that he owns nothing. Like I don't know. It's hard to believe even at that point he owns nothing. Like that. Yeah, that's
okay. So what's a blind trust? A blind trust is a trust in which beneficiaries have no knowledge of the holdings of the trust and no right to intervene in their handling. In a blind trust, the trustees have full discretion over the assets. So people do this when they go to public office and they give administration of their private business interests. Okay, to independent trust. Okay, so he just said that. Didn't he just say it's all cash and real estate? So then he also said, I don't know what's in it. So it's kind of like, in other words, you're leaving the door open for maybe they're going to do. What about the instructions? To me, that whole thing meant nothing. Like, it's just kind of like a check the box. Like, yep, put it in a blind trust, did that. I don't even know if that's true. Like, I don't believe anything he's saying. He's obviously measuring his words. He's obviously avoiding saying the thing. So my initial response is, as an expert, non-expert body language reader, is that I call baloney.
Well, let's see what the Canadian Ethics Commissioner has to say about this. So this, again, like I said, this was from way back in March, and conservatives have been criticizing him and saying like he kind of dodged the question, but also like he did say that he owns nothing, but he kind of has a blind trust. So we're going to get into this. So this past week, the Ethics Commissioner of Canada, they released the financial information of Mark Carney. So this is law. 60 days into office, he had to file something with the Ethics Commissioner. Last week, 120 days into office, the Ethics Commissioner has to then make that public. Make a summary of his financial situation public. So this was made public on Friday. Did you have something else before? I'm going to get into the results here. Do you have something else before I say what was made public on Friday?
I have a feeling this is going to be relevant, but it's kind of like he says, I own nothing, absolutely nothing, except for like a bunch of real estate and money. But otherwise, nothing. That's like saying like I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat at all, absolutely nothing, except for steak. I love steak. Oh, so good.
Well, steak's
okay. Go on.
I had to
get that out. So
cows eat grass, so steak is kind of like a vegetarian.
I guess you just play the card. You are not only what you eat, you are what your food eats. So really, I guess a meat eater could be a vegetarian as well if they're just eating unless the cows are eating other cows. Then it's
pre-processed vegetables. So
there we go, pre-processed.
There you go.
Well, let's continue
back to
kind of logic here as we assess this report. So here's the
Jake
bombshell
says,
report. Here's the bombshell report.
Hey, our producer says you could eat vegetarians.
Don't do that, kids.
Staying in the veggie category.
We're not advocating for that.
Staying on Canada here. Here is the bombshell report released just on Friday by the Ethics Commissioner in Canada. This is the summary. Carney owns 568 stocks and has 103 separate conflicts of interest. 103 separate conflicts of interest. What that means is that he is invested in 103 different companies that he knowingly has assets in that he could be right now directly affecting the price of those companies, the stocks that he has in those companies, by the actions that he's taking as prime minister. So that was that was the report that came out on Friday.
So the video we just watched was just a straight up lying through his teeth. Like that's what he was doing.
I just can't.
Pretty much. I will get into the blind trust thing in a little while because it is true that he does technically have a blind trust, but there are some very serious issues with it. Okay, I'll get into it right now. So here's
that's the point. Is like just because it's a blind trust doesn't mean they.
Well, so here's the problem. So he owned all this stuff at the end of 2024. Everybody knew he owned all this stuff at the end of 2024. He gets into office. He still owns all this stuff. He knows exactly what he owns. He then transfers everything he owns, which is lots of stocks. And also, just so y'all know, most of this is in real estate and renewable energies, and from companies that he used to work for, which I will get into. So he owns all these assets. He knows exactly what assets he owns. Even the assets he owns are for companies that he used to be on the board of. So he knows everything about these companies and the assets that he owns. He then transferred them, as he was supposed to a blind trust. But the problem is he was the one that transferred all of his assets to a blind trust, right? So they are now no longer controlled by him. But essentially the blind trust, whoever was running the blind trust, they would have to sell all of these assets, right? Or else he still knows everything that he owns. Right. And the ethics commissioner does not think that that's likely that the blind trust person will ever sell these assets. So the ethics commissioner has already said, you knowingly know of 103 different companies that you are invested in that are technically in a blind trust. Like he can't go and check and see how they're doing, but he knows they're there. He has been familiar with these assets. He's held them for a long time. He used to be on the boards of these companies. He knows they're there. He knows they're stuck in a trust. And there's 103 different separate conflicts of interest from what he knows about is in the blind trust. So basically what he said is pretty much entirely a lie.
That's crazy.
So hold on. This commissioner, how did he get this information? I might have missed that first part. What you said?
He had to disclose
60 days in office. He has to disclose all of his financial information to the commissioner, and so they
got to see what was in the trust. So they got to see what was in the trust.
What's crazy about that is the liberal side of the government in Canada are very much into the sustainable energy sources and all those companies and stuff. So he's pushing the same things in government that he owns and knows those companies really well. And he owns those stocks in those companies. And so the same sector that he's highly invested in personally, he's on that team in the government and pushing that stuff. So he knows exactly which companies to give governmental cuts to and governmental coupons and all that stuff. You know, it's like, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Ryan, the blind trust, yeah, he had to give it to the ethics commissioner of like, check it out. But also he had to show him everything that he himself put into the blind trust. And the ethics commissioner looked at it and was like, well, you put everything into the blind trust, so you know what's in there. So it's not really blind. Like there's a conflict of interest here because you knowingly own, even though it's being managed by somebody else, you knowingly own stock in 100 plus different companies and then some of which he was heavily involved in. So yeah, it's a clear conflict of interest situation here.
That's just insanity because if you go to Fidelity or you go anywhere, there's an option to look at your holdings, and then there's an option to take cash out. But if they're all in holdings of companies and indexes, you can't take the cash out. So I wouldn't say I have only cash if I don't actually have cash.
It's not cash.
It's not. That's the point. Is that okay? Then he should have liquidated 100% of those, and then that cash would have went into that's a terrible, he didn't even do a good job of lying about it. He didn't even cover his tracks for anything. It was almost he thought, well, they're just probably not going to look. So I'll just, not a big deal. I'm not saying he should be a better liar. I'm just saying he's a terrible liar.
He knew by law that they were going to look, and it was all going to be disclosed at this point. And that's where I think the story gets crazy. There's some comments talking about the tariffs. We're actually going to discuss that. Mm-hmm. And how he's also dropped the ball on that end of things as well with his campaign promises there. But Reese, let's continue the story because this story gets even wilder.
Yeah, the story does get a little. It does continue to keep getting wild. So before we move on from these things that he knowingly has access to, that he knowingly is invested in, that he's making money from. Before I move on from that, I'm just going to list off two of them. And actually, the reporter said these two because these are the ones that he's invested in the most. So the first one is Brookfield Asset Management. So this is a company that he used to be the chairman of, this company, right? And it's a Canada-America company and used to be based in Canada. Now it's based in New York. And they manage investments in real estate, infrastructure, and renewable energy. And when he was the chairman, he specifically helped raise tons of money for renewable energy projects as the chairman of it. So that's something that he knows, easy way to boost his stocks, the investments that he has there. The other one is Stripe. You guys are probably familiar with Stripe. Stripe is a financial infrastructure company, otherwise known as a payment processor. You probably paid with Stripe before. I know I have many times. It is a Irish-American company and is the largest privately owned financial technology company in the world, apparently. And he used to be on their board as well. So these are the ones that people are asking him about because they're the most concerned of you used to be on the board of these two companies. So you're the most familiar. So you would know exactly how to raise or lower the stock prices. You guys will think this is crazy. You guys will think this is just insane. So Friday, the ethics commissioner says, yes, he has these conflicts of interest, but don't worry, we have a plan. So to prevent this from hampering his ability to be the prime minister, okay? So I already explained to you the whole problem with the blind trust, because obviously in his lies here, he's relying heavily on the definition of blind trust of I don't know what's in there. He's like, you do know what's in there. You put it in there. He knows exactly what's in there. And the ethics commissioner also agreed. They're like, yep, this is a conflict of interest. You have 100 plus conflicts of interest because you know about these 100 companies. So you know what actions you're taking as prime minister are going to make the company's stocks go up and down and make you money. So this is what the ethics commissioner came out on Friday, as well as, exposing this stuff. It came out with an agreement that Carney agreed to that ahead of time. He agreed to this and said, okay, yeah, sounds good. I sign off on this. So this came out on Friday. The ethics commissioner made a plan for what's called a government conflict of interest screen. Okay. And what this is, it's an arrangement where Carney, as the prime minister of Canada, he is not allowed to be involved in, quote, any official matters or decision-making processes that could further his interests in these 103 companies. And this screen is going to be administered by his chief of staff and one of his clerks. Okay. And so it's totally fine, you guys.
It sounds
Just
like
why-
it's going to work out
Could you
really
just say
well.
that again? I think I misheard
I'll say
that.
it
Could
again.
you
So
just?
this it's a set of rules. So basically what this is, Ryan, you know, if a conflict of interest comes up, maybe in a business scenario, you're supposed to get up and leave the room, right? And be like, oh,
Yeah.
I actually know
Recuse
information
yourself.
you guys
Recuse
don't know.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to exclude yourself. So as
Yeah.
the prime minister, they have now set rules and saying if anything comes up that could be related to these 103 different companies, he's just not supposed to be involved. He has to excuse himself. He has to be like, oh,
the
sorry.
prime minister. Okay.
And get this. So here's a quote. This is from a government ethics specialist in Canada. He used to work for Ontario's integrity commissioner. This is his, so he used to work for doing this kind of stuff for Ontario's government, and he said, "quote That's the largest scope I've ever heard of."
Wow.
This is,
Right.
like the 103 like that is the largest scope he's ever heard for an agreement of this kind, a screen of this kind.
So
could've
yeah,
gone one
anything
of
that
two
affects.
directions. It
What
could
do
have
y'all
gone
think of
good.
that?
You have to sell all your crap. And instead they said, instead of selling your stocks and your investments and stuff and just go into cash, like instead of making him do that, they said, you're going to take a coffee break every single time
Right.
any discussions go any direction that has
Dude,
anything
how-
to do with anything you own. That's insane.
That
This
is
is gonna
absolute
feel
insanity. Like the
This is
fact that so
insane.
anything that could. So I don't know. I guess tariffs could help those companies. So could what do you call it? The GDP, general economic. Like so, he just needs to be out of every single discussion. It sounds like.
Well, here's
so
the
have fun
that's
being prime
insane.
minister with you don't know what's going on in these. That is absolutely absurd. Like what a ridiculous, non-selfless public service. You know, like that is absolutely pathetic. Like,
Reese,
I
do
almost
you
don't
know
have
if this
words
is
for
true
that.
or not? Kristen Duver just left a comment saying, here's one of the big issues of his 360-ish stocks. Only 3 are Canadian companies. How is he
Yes.
supposed to represent Canada in trade talks when most of his financial interests are in the USA and Europe?
I hadn't
that
gotten to
true?
this yet.
That's
Yeah, I
like-
saw that too.
You guys have
Even if
brought
he
up
owns
the
nothing, that's true. This makes it 10 times worse.
That's
like even
even
if he owned
worse.
Canada companies, if he owned Canada companies, it's a problem. If he owns other,
Right.
like, oh my goodness, like
That's even worse
99%
for Canada. That's crazy.
99% of his stocks investments are American based. 99% of them. So the two
Wow.
issues that people have mainly brought up is one, he's heavily invested in renewable energies. And so that kind of like, okay, as the prime minister, he's going to be
Man.
like, hey, Canada, let's do all the renewable energies. 'cause
oh,
the
let's
more-
talk about all those subsidies for solar and
right,
wind farms.
because the more
and,
Right.
he invests in renewable energies as the prime
That only
minister, the more his stocks go up. The other
Wow.
problem is all of his stocks are based in America. So
Wow.
for Canadians, they're like, how can he negotiate exactly as the commenter said? How is he going to how is he going to negotiate on
But
behalf of the United States when on behalf of Canada when all of his investments are based in United States companies? So
but I mean, this is like literally, it makes no sense for him to own really any companies that could benefit anywhere in the world like that. I mean, but Eric, I think there's a comment here that Eric says this happens in the US too. I don't know if we can pull that up, but absolutely it happens in the US. And there's like all kinds of ridiculous, there's the Pelosi stock tracker that literally you could just look at her stock. There are people that go through all the records and they see what her stocks are and they put them out and people make money just trading the same trades that she makes, like in her family or whatever. Like it's absolute insanity. This is ridiculous. And Dan Crenshaw goes on rants about that. You know, it used to cost something personally to run for office, and now it's just like a career plan. It's a way to get rich and all that. So he should. It's not just that he has companies outside the interests of Canada. It's that he has these companies at all, and it just makes it even more ridiculous that they're outside of Canada. So it's like if he owned like a general fund, like Canada stock.com or something, like Canada market GDP, like that was, okay, fine, that would make sense. But I just made that up. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, it doesn't make any sense for him to own any company stocks. That's insanity. But hey, you know what? Everybody in the US is doing it too. So,
well,
correct me if I'm wrong, Reese, but wasn't there also the idea that there was like some controversy over the fact that he was into renewable energy sources and all that. And he was talking to like, he's very pro all that, but then he's also invested into like oil and other not like renewable energy sources. Was that
I don't
part of
know
it?
anything about that. I mean,
Can
obviously he does have a lot of investments, but I really only know about the renewable ones. I wouldn't be surprised because, you know, people typically that have as much wealth as he does usually have multiple tiers of investments. They, you know, you spread your wealth around. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has stuff in oil and stuff, but I don't know. If you heard somebody talking about that, I haven't heard that.
Well, can I jump in and do my segment here, Reese? Because I feel like this is actually a perfect opportunity if I'm not interrupting too much.
Yeah, you want to talk about Alberta? I'll give you one more before we move on.
Okay.
One more, and then I'll let you talk about this because this isn't going to take very long.
Yeah, what Doug's saying right here applies directly to.
Okay, go for it.
I want to give the scope of. No, I'll let you finish yours. But I want to give the scope of what his personal investments could actually, how damaging it could be to the nation of Canada, and potentially. It could be, honestly, it could be a reverse effect and end up being a good thing in the long run, but it could be extremely damaging. So, Reese, do you want to finish yours first? You want me to go ahead and do that?
No, I'll let you. No, I'll finish mine first, and then we'll hop into that.
This story gets so much crazier.
It does get a little worse for Carney. It gets a little worse for Carney.
It gets worse.
It does worse. Just a little bit. It does get a little worse for Carney. So let me get into this.
Oh my goodness.
I did want to quickly state, I knew we were going to bring up the whole blind trust and the conflicts of interest related to United States politicians. And I agree, absolutely. Everybody in Congress, all of their stuff should be in a blind trust. And by blind trust, I mean truly blind trust, like you were talking about, Ryan, where you sell everything you own and you put the cash into a blind trust and you just have no clue anymore what they're investing in. So that way you're not, hampered by you're not hampered by knowing actually. And I know U.S. Congress, especially people like Pelosi, they take advantage of the fact that they don't have to do that. They take advantage of that all the time. Stock trading happens all the time in Congress, unfortunately. So it's nice that Canada has a rule like this for their prime minister, but we can see that he might be taking advantage of a little bit of a loophole. So real fast, it does get worse.
Have you seen the apps now that they have that you can invest in? They track what other people invest in. You can invest in exactly what Nancy Pelosi
copy trader.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying. Yeah,
Pelosi traders. I have seen that. That's absolutely hilarious. So it gets a little worse for Carney here.
There's literally bots you can buy and you install them on your trading platform, and it literally just receives the instructions and it goes and does the trades. They have like a
yeah. Hey, if you can't beat them, join them or piggyback off of.
That's what they say. Yeah.
Oh man.
Piggyback off the trade.
Let's dive in, Reese. Let's.
All right. So it gets a little worse for them. So on Monday, right? So this financial information and this kind of sketchy screen, like I said, has to be administered by one of his aides. So like, I don't know, maybe what if his aide just says, I don't want to administer it. So, let him do whatever he wants, like there's so many holes. There's so many issues with that prime minister that he's not supposed to as you were bringing up, Ryan. But so Monday, the conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, he held a press conference absolutely blasting Carney over this, completely blasting him. He said that Carney had lied to all of the Canadians in that video clip that we shared, as well as things that he said on the campaign trail about, doing things ethically, financially, and stuff like that. He also accused him of exploiting a blind trust and screen loophole, is what he calls it, to allow Carney to keep holding these conflicts of interest, which I would say it does sound like a massive loophole. I love that person's quote saying that's the largest scope I've ever heard of. Like that screen covers that's a lot of stuff he has to guard himself from that he can't know about or whatever as prime minister. And he also called on Carney to explain why he lied to Canadians about his finances. And finally, he called on him to get all of those assets sold and then actually take out the cash and then actually put it in a real blind trust that he has no idea what's going on. So that's what conservatives are criticizing Carney for right now. That's what the leader of the conservatives wants Carney to do. I don't think that's going to happen. Carney hasn't responded to that. But Carney is getting criticized very heavily for this right now. But here's the last thing. Here's the last piece of the story that I think is absolutely hilarious. So as I told you guys, the 120-day rule meant that Carney knew exactly when his financial information was going to be leaked to the public, right? Leaked to the public, given to the public. He knew exactly when this was going to come out. He knew exactly the screen that he had agreed to. He knew all this was going to come out. What did he decide to do? Well, last Tuesday, over a week ago, it was announced that Carney would be taking a week-long vacation to an undisclosed location. So he's going on vacation. That's on Tuesday, last Tuesday. Friday, his financial information comes out. He's nowhere to be found. He's gone. He's on vacation. Nobody knows where he's at. Okay. And so he has getting blasted for this because people were like, you scheduled your vacation to be away so that people couldn't ask you about the financial information that got listed out. So where did Carney go? Officially, nobody knows where he went. Officially, he was supposed to have stayed in Canada. That was what was said, but they're being very hush-hush about it. They don't know. Troy, could you
pull up that
article again? I'm going to share this really fast. I just think this is the funniest thing. There's a lot of jokes being made about this in Canada right now. So officially, he's supposed to have stayed in Canada, but there's a plane that's used for the prime minister, kind of like here in the United States, we have the Air Force One that the president uses. So there's a plane that's used and for the prime minister. And that plane was picked up on a plane tracker site. And on Sunday, his plane was in Australia. And so the conservatives are criticizing him right now, saying that he took a vacation to Australia to run away essentially to Australia and get away while his financial information got exposed to the public. I don't know if this is true or not. This is not confirmed. I did see an explanation. Some people were saying that there was like an Air Force thing happening in Australia that Canada was a part of. So it is possible that they took his plane to Australia for something and
his plane was there. Like the plane was there. His official plane
was 100% there in Australia.
Was in Australia.
And
while he was on vacation.
He was on vacation. His plane also came back on Wednesday. If you scroll down a little bit here, the next flights listed that are on this tracker are for Wednesday. And that was the first day that he was seen back in Canada. I say back in Canada. That was the first day he was seen publicly, was yesterday. He made a speech yesterday. So as far
as he could possibly get.
So yeah, as far as we can tell, it kind of looks like he kind of ran away to the other side of the world to escape the financial situation and then flew back on Wednesday. Maybe the official story is he was in Canada the whole time. The flight tracker says otherwise. But again, I don't want to spread rumors. This might not be true. It could have just been his plane, but I don't know why they would take the prime minister's plane to Australia if he wasn't on it. So it's possible that he took a little vacation to Australia this weekend.
They had to go down there so China could update their monitoring software on the plane. So China probably met them there and good to go. Australia does a lot of business with China, if that's what, anyway.
That's what I've noticed with this kind of stuff. If people know something's coming, they try to schedule something or bring something else up or divert people's attention long enough because they know in today's world, people are only going to be talking about a story for so long. And then if it doesn't gain momentum, something else picks up that social, hive mind momentum. And then this one gets left behind. So I could 100% see him scheduling his vacation on purpose, being nowhere in earshot, out of sight, out of mind. And then by the time he gets back, there's other things on the docket. And there are, now we're talking about the tariffs coming up August 1st, all this other stuff. So he's like, kind of got off scot-free, I guess. I mean, obviously people are still upset about it, but this is, crazy to me.
His strategy so far seems to be just completely ignore it. Like he was, whether he was in Australia or not, he was on vacation.
So he hasn't said anything about it since getting back.
He has not said anything. He's been dodging reporters as far as I can tell, and he has not said. He's not put he said anything about it. If somebody asked him, he probably would again be like, "It's all in a blind trust." I did what I was supposed to do. The ethics commissioner said it's fine, but I think there's some issues with it, obviously.
Sorry, Ryan, go ahead. I want to get into this other side of the story.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that, the whole strategy there is run and hide until the news cycle moves on, exactly like you said. And like these people should really resign with things like this, or they should, actually fix it. Like, I just don't know. I just really do. It's kind of dumbfounding to me that why he doesn't actually just fix the issue and just let it go away and have some integrity in it instead of trying to mess around with it. But like you see, though, like Gavin Newsom, he's done things that should have made him, he should have resigned decades ago. He's been in public politics for 30 years. Do you know that not to make this about Gavin Newsom, but he actually had an affair with his secretary, who was his campaign manager's wife. And his campaign manager called him out on it and then resigned. And then he made a public speech admitting to it and just didn't resign. And then later on, people were calling him for to resign, and all the pressure. And, during 2020 and all that. And afterward, he never resigned. And he's still the governor. Now he's talking about running for president. Like, same thing with Biden. He did all these horrible things, lied about where he went to school, lied about all this stuff. And they just kind of, just go forward. And people forget about it. And anyway, so this is not as big a deal, I think, as some of those, but this is ridiculous.
Well, I want to, my bad. I'm going to switch back over to this one. I want to pull this up because this, Reese, I'm going to pull yours off for a second. Yeah, and pull mine up. I want to pull this up. I think we might have lost Doug again. There we go. All right. Y'all ready? Y'all ready for this? Because this, I want to show what the potential downside is. And this is something that's also popped up this week. And it actually happened on June 18th, this last month. Okay, so imagine you've got Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. He's got investments in all these companies that are very, sustainable, energy focused. And when you do that right, I'd say it's a good thing. But a lot of times, obviously, when the government's connected, there's money connected, people aren't always doing that right. Like it's not always sustainable. Sometimes it's just a workaround or whatever. Anyways, so it's not always clean energy necessarily, but there's a part of Canada that is supplying the oil, and there's a part of Canada that's basically living off of the money made off of the oil supply. So the conservative side is kind of the money-making side when it comes to the different provinces. Let's jump into this. This is, and I'm going to botch his name. So sorry to Roy Patterson and all of my Canadian friends in the chat. I'm going to say this name wrong. So sad. So sorry. Saskatchewan, maybe? I don't know. Saskatchewan, is that right? Okay, I'm so sorry.
I don't know if that's right.
That sounds right.
And Alberta, 2 provinces in Canada, they just met June 18th. So this is Dr. Steve Turley. He just posted this video yesterday, professor, and he's talking about Wexit. So this is a potential exit of these 2 provinces, these Western provinces from Canada, because of how they're being treated by the government. Ottawa is going one direction. The capital is going one direction. The left leaning government is going one direction, and they're kind of stuck in the middle, and they just have to deal with it. So June 18th, his video is very interesting. Y'all go watch the full video if you want to see the rest of it. But these two governments of these 2 provinces caucused together without permission from Ottawa. They said, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to caucus together and essentially as a unified political force. And they together have a population of 6 million, but they control 75% of Canada's oil production. So imagine that for a second. 6 million, but they control 75% of Canada's oil production. Alberta alone generates 14% of Canada's economic output. And Canada needs this revenue. So Alberta pays out about $250 billion to the rest of Canada essentially per year. So you know how it's kind of like a money share system. It's a little bit socialist if you think about it this way, but it's headed that direction. But like that's how the government works. As states, we're all supporting the federal government right here in the United States, and some states get grants for certain things, some states get money for certain things, and so it's not always even, right? Alberta essentially paid out last year $250 billion to the rest of Canada. Quebec, on the other hand, took $13.2 billion in what they call equalization payments. Y'all are making more money than we are, so we're going to steal your money and call it equal. Now we're equal or whatever, partners in this. But the problem is these conservative provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan. I'm so bad at pronouncing it. I'm so sorry. But these provinces are very conservative heavy, and so they're not being represented by the Liberal government. And what's happening is the Liberal government is putting all of these restrictions on their economy, their ability to make money, these different industries that are here, and yet they're taking advantage of the money that's coming out of those provinces. So they're not being represented. They're being heavily taxed in a certain sense. And so what just happened? These 2 provinces just met and essentially made this proclamation against the federal government saying, hey, we need you to get these things in line. And if not, they kind of hinted at moving towards secession. So 36% of Albertans want to separate. They 36% polled right now, and that is without any sort of big campaign, official campaign to try to do that. 34% of Saskatchewan's. Oh my gosh, I cannot read that word.
From Saskatchewan.
But also, Alberta is moving forward with an independence referendum for 2026. They are officially moving forward with that. So we're going to find out. An organization in Alberta has already collected over 250,000 signatures to secede, people that say, yes, absolutely. And there's only 6 million people in these two provinces together. That's 250,000 only in Alberta. Another signature movement has been started in the other province as well. Here's his conclusion, and then I'm going to move on to this next slide. This is what he says at the end of the video. The historical precedent is clear. This is Dr. Steve Turley. The historical precedent is clear. Every major secession movement in modern history followed more or less a common pattern: the reigniting of regional identity that believes it's being slighted by a federal other ends up leading to a unified resistance that ultimately leads to separation. So that he's saying, then that's what's happening here. They're being slighted by the federal government. They're being slighted by the rest of Canada, and they're saying, hey. And so I'm going to show y'all what they're actually saying here. Let me switch over to this. So this is the official statement released by the Saskatchewan.
I think if you think of it, and I could be wrong, but I think if you think of it as like emphasizing the catch, like Saskatchewan. Like,
yeah, okay, I see it now.
Saskatchewan.
Oh yeah, so much easier.
The speech pathologist here.
Thank you. I need a linguist. Yeah, I need somebody.
I think that's what it sounds like to me.
I hope that's right, but that's what it looks like. Okay.
Kristen gave us a nice way to pronounce it in
the
Dude,
I'm gonna practice. I'm so sorry, y'all. To all my Canadian friends, I'm gonna practice for next time we talk about the provinces. But this is the joint statement released on June 18th. So this is after they caucused together. They released a statement, and Premier Danielle Smith and Premier Scott Moe of these two provinces issued the following statement calling for change to federal policies. And they're essentially saying, we need this to happen, or else we might, take things to the next level. Together, we call for an end to all federal interference in the development of provincial resources. And obviously, they've got a lot of resources in these provinces. They're making a lot of money for Canada. They are boosting Canada's economy. They're single-handedly probably keeping. Actually, they are. This is one of the things that Dr. Turley says. They single-handedly are keeping Canada in out of the red, these provinces. So without them, they're not going to make it. Together, we call for an end. Sorry, I said that. And then here's what they call for. They called for the federal government to work towards fighting China's tariffs on agri-food products and the U.S.'s tariffs on steel and aluminum, which is one of the things that Carney ran on, and now he's not doing. And I know we're in the States, so there's conflict of interest or whatever there. But I'm all for Canada being in the best position they can be in as well. So whatever. And then they address specifically repealing or overhauling the Impact Assessment Act to respect providential jurisdiction, eliminating the proposed oil and gas emissions cap because that's hurting their economy, scrapping the clean energy. Well, watch this: scrapping the clean electricity regulations, abandoning the net zero vehicle mandate, and then also repealing any federal law or regulation that purports to regulate industrial carbon emissions, plastics, or the commercial free speech of energy companies. What does all that sound like? These are all the companies that would make Carney rich if they got rich, right? The richer they get, the richer he gets, and they're the companies that he's going to be supporting, and the mandates he's going to be supporting as the leader of the government, but it's hurting these provinces. And here's the ultimate, I think, end to the story is if he doesn't get his act together, right? And if the Liberal government doesn't get their act together, we may see a split in Canada. We literally may see a modern day, miracle. Some people might consider it, but also could be, a disastrous outcome. Depends on how it goes. I don't know. It could be terrible situation to get there. I don't know. I don't know if we're talking revolution. I don't know what we're talking, but I wouldn't want to guess. But this is what it says at the end. It says, we will continue to fight to deliver on the immense potential of our provinces for the benefit of the people of the Saskatchewan and Alberta. So that's what they're saying. That's where they're at. They're frustrated. They're done. And Carney having these mixed agendas and mixed motivations is not helping the situation. It's only going to make it worse.
Yeah, it's really severe when you think about Carney having investments in the renewables, because these two providents, like you pointed out, they want the government to stop hurting the fossil fuel industry and artificially helping the renewables energy, right? But Carney obviously is only he only has reasons to support the renewable energy because he's going to make money off of that since he has investments there. So the fact that his financial situation is completely opposite of what the two conservative provinces we're talking about, what they want to happen, doesn't sound like that bodes well. I don't know if they're really going to split off, but that definitely doesn't sound like it bodes well. Sorry, Doug, hop in.
Oh, that's cool. I was just going to ask if they were to secede, what's the suggestion there? Would it be they're their own republic, or do they have other plans? Like,
no, that was the
like a 51st state, maybe.
No,
I wasn't going to say it, but
no, what Dr. Charlie mentioned was the proposed plans were to create their own nation as Alberta and their own nation as the Saskatchewan province, going from a province to a nation. So I don't think they'd be combining, but they are both of those provinces. They both share very similar beliefs, and like the
United States of Canada, they could technically do that if two together,
Yeah, and have two states and a nation, whatever, so it could be one nation or it could be two.
Yeah.
But that's what that was what he mentioned that they've talked about. So yeah, that's crazy to me that they are like putting pressure on the federal government and essentially saying, hey, we started this this thing. We're going to talk about it next year in 2026. We're going to maybe potentially vote on it. Like y'all had better do something. Y'all had better get your act together.
But didn't this also happen? Maybe not quite as extreme as this, but here in Texas, because Texas is still technically a republic, and there was talk during certain points about Texas seceding again because of how the rest of the country was going.
Texas rolls that out every once in a while, but Texas has never made. I mean, I'm saying this as someone who's lived in Texas my whole life. Texas rolls this out every decade or so. They've never actually made significant steps to actually do it. Like our governor was doing that. Like I think when Obama was in office, right, and he was doing things he didn't like, he was like, "We're gonna secede."
Saber rattling,
but it was it's basically just saber rattling. I would say this Alberta Saskatchewan situation is much closer to actually possibly happening. It's a much more serious situation than Texas has ever been in.
That makes sense.
There might be some Texans that disagree with me who are like really gung-ho about seceding, but I never thought it seemed like an actual thing that could happen as somebody who's lived in Texas for most of my life. But
okay, that makes sense.
It's just incredible to me. Like this guy's got to have friends in high places to know to have that much confidence to go in with this much ridiculous financial impropriety, whatever you want to call it, conflicts of interest. Like when I ran for the Iowa House of Representatives, okay, so like when you connect a bank account to like a card or something, it does like a deposit and then removes the deposit, like 2 cents or a cent, and then removes the deposit. I called the Iowa Ethics. I was so paranoid about it. Like I called the Iowa Ethics and I said, look, I connected Stripe or PayPal or whatever it was to this account, and it did. Do I need to report these 2 cents coming in and out? Like, do I put them as income or like what? And they're like, we've never had anybody call about this before. If it was so then they're like, basically, if it was in the same month, just forget about it or whatever. But I was still like, you don't sound very confident in that. And anyway, I was on the other end of the spectrum of, I think we should be very careful here.
Yeah, definitely. I was just saying, Roy, he said California also wants to separate from the U.S. Funny enough, I got both.
Good riddance,
angles here because I'm a Californian transplant into Texas, but California, just to clarify, from last I know of anyway, unless something's changed, which I don't think so, they didn't necessarily want to separate from the U.S. They just wanted to separate from itself. It was Northern California versus Southern California, to put it simply.
Yes,
but same concept.
I think China would probably take. We don't want that. They already tried to buy a port, which the government had to stop them from doing. Taking controlling stake in the port, controlling
the more conservative areas of California wanted to separate from the more liberal areas. Hey, I'm going to hop into the tariff situation because we did promise we were going to talk tariffs. So I'm going to I'm going to knock this out in the last 10 minutes that we have here. Troy, could you assist me in getting my article back on the screen here in a second?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my bad. I'm
You're
trying,
good.
but I don't see remove, add to stage. It's not popping up for me. Let me try this other one real quick. There we go.
There it is. So this is something that also happened last week. That has
You
to do
can
with
make it
Carney.
wider if you want.
This is something that happened last week that has to do with Carney. Oh, I should make this wider, actually. Guess that's as wide as it's going to get right now.
We can read it.
So y'all can go check out this letter if you want to. But last week, Trump sent a letter to Carney. So let's talk Carney and Trump for a little while, because again, Carney's main thing he ran on was standing up against Trump, right? And so last week, Trump sent a letter to Carney, and he went ahead and also posted the letter on Truth Social for the whole world to read. This was on July 10th, on Wednesday. This was, of course, while Carney was on vacation. And so he got some more flack for this because people were like, you should be negotiating with Trump for tariffs. You shouldn't be on vacation right now. But, to be fair, Trump did send this after Carney went on vacation, not before. So in this letter, Trump says that Canada has not done enough about the fentanyl problem. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, actually. Make this a little wider. But Canada has not done enough about the fentanyl issue here. And essentially that he's putting 35% tariffs starting August 1st on all Canadian goods. All right. And this is additional to any industry-specific tariffs that are already put in place. So for comparison, he put a 25% tariff on Canada back in February. So the one that was a big deal, but then Canada and U.S. started fighting over. This is even bigger than that one, right? So this is raising it up to 35%, just for comparison there. And this is kind of seems like this is part of Trump's promise. So Trump kind of made a promise recently that basically any countries that he hadn't struck a deal with personally, a trade deal with, he was just going to slap 10 to 20% tariffs on them. So he's like, everybody come to the table. And if you get a trade deal, that's great. If you don't come to the table with me and get a good trade deal, I'm just going to slap blanket 10 to 20% tariff on you. So this kind of comes from that. However, this is bigger than 20%. This is 35% tariff, right? Mm-hmm. And the reasons given for that is from Trump is because, quote, the reason given is because of the fentanyl issue. And so at the end of the letter, he says, quote, if Canada works with me to stop the flow of fentanyl, we will perhaps consider an adjustment to this letter. I'll just throw this out there. You guys probably know this. A lot of people that are not fans of Trump would say that the fentanyl issue coming from Canada into the United States is not a big deal. They'd say like there's not a whole lot going on there. I have a little bit of a different opinion. I know we've talked about this on previous episodes, but I do know that there are Chinese gangs that operate in Canada that do a lot of fentanyl stuff, that get fentanyl shipped kind of all around the world. I also know there's only a small percentage of cargo that's checked between Canada and the United States. And so when they say they're like, there's only a little bit of fentanyl coming in the United States. It's like, well, you only catch a little bit of fentanyl coming into the United States. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of fentanyl coming to the United States. And fentanyl in the United States is a really big deal. I don't remember the numbers, but we have so many thousands of people that die every year from fentanyl, and it's not all coming from Mexico, right? So I think it is a big deal. I think it's a massive deal. If you look it up, there are some sources though that will say, there's nothing coming in from Canada. And anyway, so Canada said earlier this year that they were going to work with the United States. Carney did put forth a fentanyl czar. I haven't heard very much from this fentanyl czar. I don't know if they've accomplished anything. I tried to look it up real fast, but I didn't really see any announcements from the last few months. So Trump doesn't think they've been doing enough. Trump doesn't think they've been doing anything. So he's slapping these tariffs on here. It also stated that the tariffs that he slapped it on he also said the other reason that Canada gets a 35% tariff is because earlier in the year when he slapped Canada with tariff, instead of them coming and negotiating with him enough, I guess, according to Trump, Canada turned around and slapped a reciprocal tariff, and he didn't like that. And so now he's saying, if you slap any reciprocal tariffs at this point, I will just raise the tariff above 35%. So if you slap a reciprocal tariff of like 35, then this is jumping up to 70. He's like, whatever you throw at us, I'm going to add it on top of this 35% tariff. So that is the letter. This is supposed to go into effect on August 1st. Carney did respond the same day while he was on vacation, maybe in Australia. And he responded with this little guy here. I'm not going to read this, but I'll just be honest with you. It doesn't say anything. Basically, this is, it says, Canada has made vital progress to stop the scourge of fentanyl in North America. We are committed to continuing to work with the United States to save lives and protect communities in both our countries. We are building Canada strong, federal government, yada, yada, yada. You can read the whole tweet if you want to. He got absolutely blasted. You can see the expletives if I scroll down a little bit here. He got absolutely blasted for this tweet because it's kind of a know-nothing tweet. It's like, it's a nothing burger. He's just saying, we're going to keep working on it, but obviously it's not really working right now. So a lot of people are really upset with him because this was the thing that he ran on was I'm going to make free trade. I'm going to stop Trump from blasting us with these tariffs. But that does not appear to be happening right now. And then the final thing I'll say about this is on Tuesday, remotely, from what I could tell, it was not in person. I don't think he's been seen in person since Wednesday, but on Tuesday remotely, he told reporters that he was going to keep negotiating with Trump, but basically he said it's not likely that he can stop the tariffs from happening. So he admitted to failure basically on Tuesday, and people have called him on that and be like, if you're admitting that you're saying like, yeah, sorry, I can't stop the tariffs from happening. You're like, you have officially failed your campaign promise, which was you were going to stand up to Trump and you're going to keep these tariffs from happening. I do want to ask you guys, what do y'all think about this? Before I let y'all answer, I will say I do feel just a little bad for Carney in this situation. If I was him, I would not want to be him. I would not want to be the Prime Minister of Canada, currently negotiating with Trump right now. The United States has a very big economy, so Trump has a lot of leverage here as far as slapping tariffs on Canada. And so I wouldn't want to be in his seat trying to negotiate this down to zero. He did make a very strong campaign promise, though, saying that he was going to stand up to Trump and stop these tariffs. So what do y'all think that Carney should do in this situation? Is this a campaign failure? What is it?
I think it's absolutely a campaign failure. I don't feel bad for him at all. I think this is just what's the saying that the hen comes home to roost? I mean, it's kind of like you reap what you sow. And so if he had sowed, we're going to work together and we're going to do what's best for Canada, okay, that's what's going to happen. But he didn't. What he did was he bluffed. He's bluffing and he got elected. And now he's getting called on his bluff. Like that's to me when Trump says, if you do reciprocal tariffs, we're going to do even more tariffs. That's when it escalates and you find out where it actually is going to break. And one of them actually eventually has to break. And it would be Canada in this case. And so now he's not in a high leverage position. He's in a terrible position and it's just going to get worse. And so to me, it would be better. It would behoove him to cooperate sooner and try and save a little face. But I mean, this is just standard political statement that you make, which means nothing. I mean, that's pretty much normal.
Yeah, I would like, if I were in his shoes, I would like to try, if I'm Canada, where I'm representing Canada, I've got something to trade with. I've got something to barter with. I've got something to negotiate with, right? It's not like he's empty-handed. And I just feel like, I'm not being anti-USA here and saying it, but at the same time, it's like, why not try to work with Trump and say, hey, what do y'all want? Let's make a deal. Let's do something. We can help you, you help us. And I'm going to try to actually work for the good of what I said I was going to do for Canadians, and I'm, and I think he could have some leverage if he actually tried, but instead he's on vacation,
Well, that's the point. The point I'm making is that I think that he should just actually negotiate in good faith because he does have leverage. It's not zero leverage. I mean, Canada is an amazing country. They have things to offer. They have goods and resources. We have a huge trading relationship with the U.S. And all Trump is saying is we're not
steel and aluminum to the United States. So that's a major import that they do.
Yeah. Trump's just saying we're not going to be taken advantage of anymore. And he keeps saying bluffing like Trump's the bad guy instead of just saying, hey, let's bring this trade relationship where it needs to be. And the sooner he takes that approach, the more logical approach.
One of the things I've noticed about Trump's the pattern is people that are willing to talk with him, sit down with him, meet with him in person, and say, hey, let's work this out. He likes that. He likes that response. And that's what I've seen from him traditionally. Just like, why not go that route and then go, hey, here's what we got to offer. This is what we want. How do we get there? Instead of ignoring or making bold statements, publicly, but then not coming to the table privately and chatting or whatever. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think he's kind of failed his people in a way, with what he said he was going to do and where they're at.
I do think he could try a little harder with the negotiating for sure. I would like to see him, try to have a little bit more of a good faith negotiation with Trump. I know that's probably not always the easiest thing to do, but it does seem it's possible. Other countries have done it. So I don't see why Canada can't also strike a trade deal with the United States. Other countries have struck a trade deal with the United States. Personally, I would like to see the United States and Canada having a more friendly arrangement. However, I do also know that there are some issues related to some China stuff that we probably don't have a whole lot of time to talk about. But there are some issues, especially related to the fentanyl stuff. And I do think that I don't think that the Prime Minister is probably putting enough resources and energy into getting to the bottom of like the fentanyl and the Chinese gangs operating in Canada. And so if they were a little more like hard on that stuff, then I kind of take Trump for his word. I mean, I guess he could be lying. He could just be using fentanyl as an excuse, like that's a political thing to do. But I do kind of just take him at his word. I'm like, every single time he's been very consistent saying the number one issue is the fentanyl thing. That's the number one issue. Like that's the reason why we're slapping extra tariffs on you guys beyond just tariffs on like steel and things like that, because we want the United States to be able to produce more of that at home. But of everything else, he's like, I'm doing this because of the fentanyl issue. And even said in his letter, if you work with me more on this, then I will bring the tariffs down. And so the fact that the Prime Minister has not so far been able to be like, let's get to the bottom of this. What exactly do you want to see happen? President Trump will get it done. Like, I think that would probably be better for Canada if he could go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull this article that you posted, Doug. I did pull up a comment saying, I think it was maybe Kristen saying, I haven't seen a fentanyl czar in Canada, but it looks like they officially do have one. Maybe they haven't been in the news.
No, I wasn't saying that he didn't pick one. He did create a fentanyl.
Right. No, that was a comment.
I just don't know what they've accomplished. And I was trying to find if they've accomplished much. And from what I could tell, there wasn't any like news about anything they'd accomplished. So I don't know.
Because here's how it's working so far from what I see. If you want to know what they're doing in their fight against fentanyl, you have to contact them for a copy of Canada's Fentanyl Czar's interim report at this email address.
Well, I think, obviously they're not being super transparent about what they've done, but I think at least the fact that Canada, this is the official Canada.ca website. So they are admitting right here that fentanyl is a lethal drug that has torn apart communities and families across Canada and the United States. So, and that it's confronting this very serious issue. So they're admitting
something about fentanyl too here. Trump just signed something. What was
they're
that?
admitting that it is a very serious issue, even from their perspective. So they're not pretending like it's not there,
Yeah, I think that's just kind of like covering your tracks and smoke. I mean, of course they have to say that. Like, I think it's great that they're saying that and not pretending that doesn't exist. But to me, that's also it gives cover for not doing anything for it. It's like, look, we agree, but
I don't think it doesn't get much cover. I think
Right.
I think it shoots them in the foot, because if they're not doing anything and they're saying it's a very serious issue, then it's like, well, now you put your foot in your mouth.
Well, there's a difference between saying fentanyl is a very serious issue and saying there's a difference between that and just admitting Canada has not done a good enough job to prosecute people in Canada, including Chinese gangs that are smuggling fentanyl into the country and then smuggling it into other countries like the United States. Like if they said that and be like, we Justice Department get on it, then I would be happier. But I think that's the issue, is they have not gone full force into it. And I don't really know what Carney is thinking that he could possibly do unless he was willing to take that very seriously. I'm not usually the conspiracy theorist kind of guy, but I don't know. He did just say, I'd say like maybe he's afraid to stand up to China. I will say since we've been dunking on Carney this entire time, I think he did something kind of good this past week. This is my last bit of information that I have. On Wednesday, just yesterday, he announced greater tariffs against Chinese steel. Nice. Because and y'all probably might be a little bit familiar with this, but so Trump has had tariffs on steel, like 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum from all around the world, right, including China. So now China's not selling as much steel to the United States anymore. But China, they still need to sell their steel, right? They still want to make money. So they're looking to sell more to Canada. Well, Canadian steel manufacturers are nervous about this because they're like, if we start getting flooded with Chinese steel, here's the problem. China sells their steel at a price that's lower than it costs to produce steel. So they're being subsidized by the Chinese Communist Party to put out steel manufacturers out of business around the world so that people will be dependent on Chinese steel. That's what they're trying to do. So they sell below what it costs to produce the steel. So it's very clear they're not making money. They're losing money in order to hurt other countries. So Canada is getting nervous. And they're like, shoot, now all this Chinese steel is going to flood into China. Chinese steel is going to flood into Canada. So a month ago, Carney did put some limit and some tariff against Chinese steel. It wasn't very big. It was pretty small. It wasn't a big thing. But yesterday, because of the current Trump situation, he was like, I guess he felt like he needed to do something more, and he was getting more pressure from the steel industry and steel manufacturers at home in Canada that are afraid of being put out of business. And so he was like, all right, we're raising this even more. So he slapped a 50% tariff on Chinese steel. That goes into effect if, or actually on every country, it goes into effect if they sell more than half of what they sold last year. So for instance, if China sold Canada 100 steel beams last year in 2024, this year they can only sell 50 to Canada before the 50% tariff goes into effect. So it's a little complicated. It's like they can still sell half of what they sold last year, but once it gets to half, then the 50% tariff goes into effect. 50% tariff is pretty significant.
That's very significant.
So that was I think that's a win for Carney. I'm like, all right, you're protecting your country from cheap Chinese steel, not preventing your steel manufacturers from going out of business. Personally, I think that was a win. I wanted to give one positive thing since we've been dunking on him this whole time.
I agree. I think that's a good thing. So, yep. Any final short comments, and then we got to finish up because we are well over that hour mark.
One final thing I'd say is, it makes sense when you run for office. A campaign is different than being in office. And so you have maybe a different strategy for running your campaign versus being in office. But if a staple of your campaign is impossible to execute while you're in office, then you should probably have a different campaign strategy. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. And I've given examples in the past about people overplaying their leverage, and then it comes back to bite them. And so they need to be careful about that. It's better to run for office with integrity and just do everything with the right level of transparency and that sort of thing. If you're going to run for office, that would be the case. But I do agree. I think this is it's good to see him at least looking at the interests of the Canadians and the steel industry and protecting that. And actually, it's protecting national interests as well, because steel is quite important. And so you don't want to give that over to another country that could be hostile. So great conversation. A lot of fun facts here that you brought for us today.
Yeah, just sell your stocks while you're the prime minister, rebuy after that, and fixes the problem. Anyways, all right, great discussion. Great job, Reese. Good to see all y'all in the chat today. Awesome discussion in the chat as well. And we will see y'all tomorrow.
All right. God bless.